Hello friends, welcome to the channel. Bob here. Welcome to, this is primarily going to be an Embers Adrift video, also talking a little bit about MMOs and classic MMOs, that kind of thing. So first of all, before I start, Embers Adrift has a free weekend going on, which started today, Friday. So if you're looking at trying the game out, or you've been waiting for a free weekend, now is the time. It's Friday, the 26th, 27th day, I'm not sure, but anyway, it's Friday, and you've got this weekend to try the game out if you want to. And I recommend trying it out, irrespective of what I'm going to say in this video or what anyone else says. Just give it a go. So I'm kind of doing a summing up, actually, because I subscribed to the game, but then I unsubbed, and it's unlikely that I'll go back and sub anytime soon. I'll keep following the patch notes and whatnot, and I'll see how things go, but it's unlikely that I'll probably sub in the near future. But one of the criticisms that the channel gets is that I don't come to any conclusion with regards to MMOs. So I'll play an MMO, you see a few videos, and then that's it. You never see it again. So I kind of want to try and change that, and I'm going to go back and revisit some other MMOs that I might have done that too. But Embers Adrift was the last game that I played, last MMO that I was playing, so I'm basically going to do it. So I'm basically going to start doing it with the last MMO that I played, as that kind of makes logical sense with regards to where videos are currently on the channel. It's, as I said, I stopped subbing, so this is like a summing up of my time playing the game. It's when I first started playing Embers Adrift, I kind of got that feeling. I guess, like, going back first of all, just to talk a little bit about MMOs, classic MMOs in general, and where, like I feel they are anyway. Obviously, it's all just personal opinion, but I feel that I've said this before, but I feel that in some way we're kind of being hoodwinked by these classic MMOs, not maliciously or spitefully, but what I feel is happening is that developers are taking a mechanic from a classic MMO, they're fitting it into their game, and then they're telling us that this is a classic MMO, this is what you've been looking for. It's all about, this is what you've been looking for, you know, this is what you've been waiting for from an MMO experience. You know, we're going back to those days. That's the general message that's coming out of all of these MMOs. I kind of feel that the message is cheapened when there's so many people saying it, because then if there's enough people saying a thing, it then kind of doesn't really become a thing. And the fact that all of these MMOs are really suffering from a population point of view, I think is also quite telling in that regard. There are, no matter what anyone tells you, there are now a number of classic indie developed classic MMOs, modern classic MMOs that are available, even though they keep telling you that this is what you're looking for. Yeah, but don't fall for it. There are a number available, so just bear that in mind. And Embers Adrift has kind of been the same, really. I think it's taken a classic mechanic or two from an MMO, from a classic MMO. It inserted it into their game, and then it said this is a classic experience. Now, my own view of playing all of these games, but also having the advantage of being able to go back and play classic MMOs on emulated servers that are very accurate, I've come to the conclusion that we're not getting a classic experience. It's difficult to pinpoint exactly why, you know, because a lot of this thing can be just feelings. You know, I know there'll be players out there playing Shroud of the Avatar, Project Gorgon, or whatever it may be, who feel they are getting a classic MMO experience, and that's fine. You know, I'm not going to tell anyone else what they should be thinking, but just for me personally, I think they're just wide of the mark. I think the reason is because a couple of things. I think, first of all, it's like trying to capture lightning in a bottle for a second time. You know, these classic MMOs, when they came out, and I'm talking about, you know, UO, EverQuest, Asheron's Call, we'll even chuck in Dark Age of Camelot, you know, City Heroes maybe, because it was kind of like the first superhero MMO. We'll chuck all those games in as well. These were all created by, I guess, what were the pioneers of MMO development, really. You know, your Brad McQuaid, your Raf Costas, those kind of people. And they were all very, very good at what they did, you know. And at that time, they also didn't know what you couldn't do or what you shouldn't do. So they just went for it, and they just did things. And it all worked magically in all of these MMOs to varying degrees. But that was then, you know, as I said, that was really a lightning in a bottle moment. And I just don't think that can be emulated anymore. I think it's a, I mean, without being too critical, and I don't mean this mean-spiritedly, but it's obviously a creative thing. It's a talent thing. No one's expecting them to create MMOs like EverQuest or Asheron's Call or whatever it may be. And I kind of wonder if that's the case, if maybe we should be moving away from the classic MMO moniker. Like maybe they shouldn't be calling their MMOs a classic experience, because maybe it's not replicatable. Maybe what happened then, and that's it. And maybe what they should be saying is that this is our MMO in 2023. This is what we're giving you. Like it or lump it. Maybe that's the angle we should be taking, because, as I said, I've played plenty of these games, and I'm just struggling to see any resemblance to a classic MMO. I don't know what you guys think. Maybe it would be better if you moved away from this. This is what you're looking for, kind of classic thing. Maybe each MMO should just be looked on its own merits and whatnot. And maybe that there are people that are doing that, and maybe there are people that are doing that are enjoying the games. But I think the issue is that even if you say you're not trying to create another EverQuest, if you reference EverQuest and you reference classic MMOs, and obviously your game is going to be compared to those games. It's unavoidable. But that's where I feel from a classic MMO experience. I kind of feel I'm quite disillusioned. I don't think we're getting what we're being told that we're getting, or that they're trying to give us. And so we're kind of left in this almost a bit like a vacuum, really. Where I'm not finding modern MMOs particularly attractive. I'm also not finding classic MMOs particularly attractive. And it's, I might want to say classic, I mean classic, like modern classic. I went back and played a bit of Asheron's Call the other day, and I was just absolutely amazed. I was enjoying it so much. Same with EverQuest P99. I've got some plans to start a new little series on that. Because you play them and you think, well, this is it. Why play these games when I can play these games? It's and so it's not that. Some people say, oh, well, maybe you just don't like MMOs anymore, and it's not that. I'm like many of you, I'm still looking for that MMO, and I go back to the numbers thing with regards to the population of these games. Many of you over the last few years have said to me, I'm just so desperate just for an MMO, any MMO to come out and just do things right, and what is right, I don't know. I guess, as I said before, it kind of goes back to maybe a bit of a feeling. When you play the games, the feeling that you still get from playing a classic MMO, and the feelings that kind of come and go when you play a modern classic MMO, but they come and go too quickly. So moving on to Embers Adrift specifically. So when I first started playing Embers Adrift, I really enjoyed it. I really liked it. I had a good time. It was a combat pacing that kind of hoodwinked me or drew me in, I think. That's what kind of really got me really going at the start. That's what I really enjoyed. I went into a dungeon with a couple of friends, and the actual the group dungeon content was really good. The first dungeon was really good. Unfortunately, as time went on, I kind of found that all the dungeons are kind of a bit of a cut and paste of each other. So that kind of took the shine off it a bit. But yeah, those are early times, and it didn't last for very long, but those early times were enjoyable, and I really did enjoy the experience of going into a dungeon, running around. The combat pacing was, I think, is still tuned really well. The group content, group combat was good, tactical. It turned out not to be as kind of tactical and nuanced as I first suspected. I think that one of the reasons for that is the fact that the classes just don't have enough of a toolbox, really, and also the classes kind of overlap a bit, really. Partly because things like tanks, from a threat point of view and ability point of view, you can find some classes, even the healers, that can tank just as well, if not better, if you stack the right bonuses. And the classes as well don't have any real, I guess, what you would call identity of their own. They incorporated this thing where each base class uses certain weapons to identify them, but I don't know what that's all about. I don't quite know why that matters really. Maybe it's because if you're in a group, I don't know, and you see someone getting attacked, you can see if it's a DPS or a healer or whatever. I don't know, but you should know that anyway. You know, you didn't need these identifying things in EverQuest or any other games. I don't know why they've got them in here. Maybe they just feel it's a quality of life thing that helps. I don't know. But yeah, but just going back to what I was saying, so I don't sidetrack myself too much, is that all of those early moments are quite good. One, because of the combat pacing, and two, because the grouping from a tactical combat point of view and an emergent gameplay point of view, even though it wasn't anywhere near like EverQuest on P99, it was a little bit like it, you know. So I enjoyed it for what it was. But as time went on, a lot of that kind of stuff wore off. I got more fed up with the classes. I got more fed up with the fact that the classes just really didn't have any identity of their own, even from an animations on their unique abilities, right down to the fact that the classes kind of look very similar as well. You know, it's hard to differentiate between them from a looks point of view. Part of that is to do with the way that armor is dealt with, but I'll go into that just very shortly. So yeah, so as time went on, you know, the initial kind of rush just fell away, and a lot of the frustration started to come in, and the main reasons as to why I stopped playing the game. And it wasn't anything to do with content. It wasn't anything to do with class balance or graphics or sound or anything like that. It was mainly to do with the fact that the game spends too much of its time dictating what I do within my time. So every game has these little roadblocks. You know, in EverQuest, at some point you'll need to go back and empty your bags. Ultima Online, you know, had a similar sort of thing. All of these games had little roadblocks where at some point during your gameplay loop you've got to stop, and that's fine. I think that's probably quite healthy actually. But I've never come across an MMO that had so many of them. An MMO that wants to dictate your time as quite so much as Embers Adrift. I mean, basically, if I'm not emptying my bags because I don't have enough bag space and you can't increase it, or if I'm not going to, particularly when you play a tank, if I'm not going to repair my equipment all the time, because at some, you know, quite early on in that process, you start to lose a lot of AC, where it just becomes a point where you've got to go and do it. Or if I'm not having to go and refresh the permanent stamina loss that I've got by sitting at an ember ring, it's going back to the bag thing again. If it's not one or the other, it's another one, and you've got three mechanics in the game that are telling you when to stop and go and take a break, and that is not good from a gameplay loop point of view. It just takes you out of the moment far too much, particularly if you're certain classes. It's even worse, like from a stamina point of view, and from a like an armor point of view. If you're a tank, it can be even worse. Now, you know, these things are not, maybe there obviously is a small minority of a minority who don't mind this, okay, so they do what's required to play the game, and that's fine. But I would say from a general population point of view, when I'm talking about a general population, I'm talking about WoW players or Lost Ark players or modern MMO players. I'm talking about the majority of people who are looking for a classic MMO experience. These things are just going to be just annoying, and they are. You've told me that they are. You know, you give me feedback and you've told me that you found the same kind of thing. So in this game, you've got three mechanics that will take you out of your gameplay loop. And because there are three of them, and because personally I think they're tuned too high, then I spend more of my time you know, the thing is, if you don't go and things like bank space, which is a WoW thing for a start, having to pay for bank space can be quite expensive, you know. So if you don't keep going and selling your stuff when your bag is full, you end up destroying stuff and you end up losing money. You know, who wants to do that? The stamina thing eventually gets to a point where your stamina can get really, really low from a maximum point of view. So if you're a healer or a tank trying to keep aggro, this is a real problem. If you're a tank repairing your armor all the time, again, it's a horrible experience. And you can just sit there and let all these things just go down and down and down, and you can just keep losing money because you have to keep destroying stuff. But these are not fun, good gameplay mechanics in any sense of the word. Even from a point of view of trying to balance out how much time you spend adventuring, it's just far too highly tuned. And in the end, I just got fed up with the game telling me when to go and sit down, and so I just stopped playing. And these things happen really early. Like at the moment, my armor quality is now 65%. Right, so I'm going to have to go and repair it at some point. My inventory has been full for ages, but I just couldn't be bothered to go and sell stuff. And it's this kind of stuff that is a real issue, and it's what led me to unsubbing, really, because I just felt that I don't want to play a game that wants to dictate my time. You know, as I said, it's quite healthy for there to be something like this in a game, in an MMO particularly, where people can just sit there playing for hours and hours and hours. But I just felt that in this game, it's just too highly tuned, and in the end it was just not fun. There's some other things as well from a mechanical point of view that really just don't make any sense. Like nighttime makes no sense. It just feels like someone has said, I remember nighttime in EverQuest, let's put it in our game. You know, there's no reason for there to have a really, really dark, long nighttime in an MMO, other than the fact that just because. You know, if you've got some other mechanics surrounding it, I can understand that. You know, I think I mentioned it before. A game like Amnesia. If you got a game like Amnesia, where when it's dark, Amnesia, I should say, when it's dark, your mental state is affected. That's fine. There's a reason for it being dark. In EverQuest, there's a reason for it being dark, because the world is just a lot more dangerous than it is than the Embers Adrift world. So it gives you there's more of an impact of darkness. But in this game, it's just dark, and it's just frustrating. It's not a problem for me. Like, I've got a screen that allows me to see very well in the dark. I don't need to worry about it at all. But there are people that do. You know, people have said to me that it was a real issue. It could be because of eye conditions or age, like me, old fogey, or whatever it may be. But as I said, I can forgive it if it feels like it's there for a reason. But it just feels like it's there because EverQuest did it, you know, and that's not a good enough reason. Things like damage dice on weapons. When I first saw it, I was like, oh, that's great. Like, as an old D&D player, I got a hit of nostalgia. But then within the first, like, 2 or 3 weeks of playing the game when it was released, and new players were coming in, they were saying, I don't get this. Like, why is this like this? It's just overtly obtuse. It doesn't need to be this way. Just show the numbers. Like, what is it adding mechanically? And the worst thing about this was actually the response from some of the more experienced community members in chat. You know, this could have been anything. This could have been, maybe people just weren't particularly good at maths. It's not their fault. Could have been like a numbers dyslexia type thing. Again, it's not their fault. But some of the responses in chat were pretty crap. As some responses from a lot of the community, some of the community have been over the course of when I've been playing the game. But again, you could just have 4 to 10 instead of whatever the dice equivalent is, because the dice equivalent is not adding anything to the game mechanically. All it's doing is giving someone who played Dungeons and Dragons a bit of a nostalgia hit, and that's not a good enough reason when it's clearly causing a problem to potential customers of yours. It's kind of like going back to the embers thing, where you have to go and sit at an ember ring. Like from a nighttime point of view, I did an experiment where I would go and sit at an ember ring, just as the sun was going down, just as a little experiment. I did it 2 or 3 times at different ember rings, and what you would see is that like people would come to ember rings and sit there through the night, and then when the sun started coming up, they would go and start playing again. That's not a good when your players are having to do that. That's not a good design decision. Whether you're trying to be niche or hardcore or whatever it may be, that's just a bad decision. Things like armor weight. I don't understand why my armor weight is. Well, I understand why why the mechanic is there, but why do it that way? You know, and I've seen people try to defend the armor weight thing by saying, I like the fact that you have to make a choice. Well, there's always been a choice in MMOs or any RPG for what armour you wear. It doesn't have to be restrictive in this way. The thing is, as well, is who wants to go and slay the dragon, get a new chest piece, and you can't wear it, or to wear it you have to decide what other loot you got to take off. That's a bad decision. It's a decision, but it's a bad decision. and it's just not fun. I mean, I've got armor and stuff on some characters sitting in the bank that I can't put on because of the armor weight thing. It's a terrible way to balance armor. It means that you go out and you do quests and you get equipment, and you kill the bosses and you get equipment, and it happens, and it's like oh god moment, because you get it and you're excited, but then you realise, well, you can't wear it, or maybe you can wear it if you take loads of other stuff off. It's just a horrible way of balancing our AC. Just do it from a tier point of view. There's already tiers in the game, bronze, iron, that kind of stuff. Just balance it that way. It's such a horrible decision. Whoever may come up with that decision, I don't know what games they were playing, but it's just terrible. Deciding whether to wear a nice quest drop item that you've got, or you've won a piece of equipment from a boss, is not a decision at all. You shouldn't have to make that decision. Make a decision between wearing a different chest piece because it's got different stats on for different occasions. Maybe I can see that, but this way of doing it is just really, really unfun. Like a lot of those things I've mentioned about the game, I think there's a fine balance in MMOs between difficulty and being hardcore and being fun. And I think the game just misses the mark on many of them. But it was weird in the end. You come into an MMO that's still under development, and you kind of think that the reason you're going to stop playing is because of content. It's not enough content, or whatever it may be. But it's not the case in this instance. It's the design decisions that have been made. The design decisions to take me out of the moment too often. Design decisions like nighttime or armor weight, or whatever it may be, and these are all things that many other people have mentioned, and you can go on about not trying to attract a general audience, although why you wouldn't want to attract a general audience who's looking for a classic MMO, I don't know, but those players are clearly not getting on board with what's going on, not just in this game but other MMOs as well, and it's an issue. It's a real issue, and there are some design decisions being made that I just don't understand. It makes the game less fun. I try to hope that these decisions are not being made because there's not enough content in the game. So as a player, like the leveling speed also is chronically slow, and I kind of hope that we're not being punished because the developers haven't finished their game or got it into a state where it's ready for release. I don't know. I hope not, but it's hard not to feel that way when you see some of the decisions made. And so I feel quite disappointed about modern classic MMOs in general. I just don't know where we go from here. I guess what's going to happen, I guess it will just carry on happening. Developers will release a classic MMO. There's an initial influx of players. The population then tanks after a few weeks, and you're kind of just left with another MMO that's got a small population, just plodding along, maybe struggling to survive. It doesn't need to be that way. I don't understand it. I think Embers Adrift could have been a real turning point. And when you first play the game, like if you're a new player, and you're going to play the free weekend, you might find like I did, the combat pacing is like EverQuest, so it's nice and it's nicely paced. You go into a dungeon with a group, and the combat feels really good. But after a while, there's lots of other stuff that kind of starts creeping in. As I said, I feel that Embers Adrift could have been a real turning point, but I just think it's made the same mistakes that other MMOs have made. And I think the issue that this one has made is the fact that it's just tuned everything to too much of an extreme, even for a classic MMO audience. So all that's left are just a really rabid fan base who, I mean, as an MMO developer, do you want to keep listening to the same voices all the time? Because if new voices are not coming in, or if you're not being challenged, then things are just going to be like this as they are. It's a shame. I don't know. Maybe an MMO will come out and it changes the formula. It's, as I said before, going right back to what I said at the start. A classic MMO is a feeling, for me, for you, for everyone. But it's clear that these MMOs are currently not hitting that feeling. I don't think it's because it's just nostalgia. I don't think it's because we're expecting too much. In fact, we're expecting less. You know, I mean, I'd be quite happy if this game had less dungeons in it at the moment and less content, and it went back to beta testing, and it reevaluated some of these decisions. I would much rather that happened. But it is what it is. You know, here we are, and I don't see things changing. I think that the target audience was just going to keep bouncing off of these games, and it's sad, you know, because we all want something new, but it's just not happening. And all these games are left with, and it's the same with Project Gorgon, Shroud of the Avatar, and a number of other modern classic MMOs that I've played. Is that they're just left with a small audience who just keep repeating the same things over and over again. I think when, I don't know what games people have been playing, but I think when I see people defending things like armor weight as a good thing, and it means you have to make choices, that's where I start to lose faith in the audience that are playing these games, because getting a drop from a boss or a named and then not being able to wear it is that's not a good decision to make. That's poorly designed. But there you go. As I said, there is a free weekend going on this weekend. I think it's already started, so give it a go, see what you think. I think what you'll probably find is you'll initially really like it, because particularly if you're an EverQuest player, people are kind of saying, oh, it's, you know, I've played it for a couple of days and it's given me an EverQuest vibe, and it kind of did that for me at first, but then I lost that pretty rapidly. But ignore what I've said, you know, just try it, make up your own mind, and see where you go. But anyway, thanks for watching. We're still waiting. I'm still praying for that MMO that comes out, and yeah, tickles our fancies. We're all desperate for it. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll speak to you again soon.